Okay, so you guys have sent us a ton of stuff about Zyn,
Mm.
and it seems like it's everywhere right now, right?
Yeah.
Out of stock, rumors about a ban. What is the deal with this stuff? Let's dive in and figure out this whole Zyn situation.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely a hot topic.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing with Zyn isn't just about this product itself. It's kind of a microcosm of larger debates
Yeah.
about nicotine and addiction and regulation, especially as we get into, the 2020s.
Absolutely. And one of the articles you sent over starts with this college student, Patrick, who's using Zyn to quit vaping.
Okay.
And he talks about how discreet it is, no clouds, no smell. It's not even just about the health aspect for him, but the social acceptance too.
Right.
So I feel like that must resonate with a lot of Zyn users.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really cleverly taps into this kind of cultural shift
Mm.
where it's not just about quitting nicotine altogether anymore. It's about switching to methods that are more compatible with modern lifestyle social norms. And that's a big part of, I think, why Philip Morris, the company behind Zyn, has seen sales just absolutely explode.
Mhm.
We're talking an 80% increase.
Wow.
But that popularity has kind of come back to bite them a little bit with these legal challenges.
Yeah, what was the deal with that? I know we saw something about the Attorney General, was it in D.C.?
Right. Yeah.
Something about online sales and a flavor ban.
Exactly. So in June, the D.C. Attorney General actually hit Philip Morris with a subpoena, alleging that their online sales of Zyn, specifically the flavored varieties, directly violated D.C.'s ban on flavored tobacco products.
Okay.
And in response, the company decided to temporarily halt all online sales of Zyn. And that's a big reason why we're seeing these shortages across the country.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, everyone's looking for it, and it's like trying to find a unicorn in a grocery store.
Exactly.
So, I mean, they're trying to catch up, but wow, what a mess.
Yeah, and it gets even more complicated because this DC thing is just one piece of it, right? You've got, at the federal level, the FDA is still reviewing Zyn's marketing application.
Oh, wow.
So that's a whole other layer.
Interesting.
And then you've got lawmakers, Congress.
Yeah.
Some are calling for stricter regulations. Others are saying, well, hold on a second. What about adult smokers who are trying to use this to quit? It's a very tangled web.
So it seems like a lot of strong opinions on both sides. Is Zyn a good thing, or is Zyn a step in the wrong direction?
Exactly.
It's almost like this debate we see with a lot of things, with harm reduction versus addiction.
100%. And, it's important to understand both sides, right?
Right.
You have folks who say, look, nicotine is nicotine. It's addictive. It's especially dangerous for young people whose brains are still developing.
Right.
And they worry that even these products that are marketed as tobacco-free could be a gateway to a lifetime of nicotine addiction.
Right. And you can't deny that it's addictive,
No.
regardless of the form it takes. But then there's the other side of the coin where people are like, well, hold on, this is way better than smoking cigarettes.
Right.
So it's this weird
Yeah,
push and pull.
it is. And that's the challenge that regulators are dealing with.
Of course.
How do you make a product like this available to adults who might benefit, who might be able to use it responsibly as a harm reduction tool?
Mm-hmm.
But also, how do you put up those guardrails, especially for young people?
Yeah.
It's a tough balancing act.
Absolutely. And to make matters even more complicated, you have this whole social media aspect that's blown up, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like a whole subculture with these like Zinfluencers now.
Influencers, yeah, it's fascinating. And I
Yeah.
think it's really crucial to look at because it just shows the power and influence of social media, especially for a product like this.
Mhm.
It's not just about the product itself anymore. It's about the whole culture,
Right.
online culture that develops around it. And that's a whole other can of worms for regulators to try to figure out.
For sure, because then it's like appealing to this whole new generation, maybe who wouldn't have even considered cigarettes.
Right, exactly.
But because it's cool and trendy and on TikTok, it's like, oh, maybe I should try this.
It seems harmless. It's it's tricky.
Very tricky situation.
It is.
So it sounds like we've got a lot to unpack here.
We do.
A lot of different angles to this.
Lots to dive into.
So let's get into it. It really is fascinating, though, this whole Zinfluencer thing.
Yeah.
A little bit worrying, to be honest.
Right.
Reminds me of, a few years ago, and we did that deep dive about vaping
Mm-hmm.
and how all these companies were using social media to market to young people.
Yeah. It's unfortunately a very familiar playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with Zyn, you have this added layer of, It's perceived as a healthier alternative to cigarettes.
Right.
So it can be even more appealing to a younger demographic who maybe wouldn't have even considered smoking.
Exactly.
Because it's like, oh, this is fine. This is,
Ugh.
cool.
It's like a lifestyle brand almost,
Yeah, totally.
which is so smart from a marketing perspective, but
Yeah.
a little
A little ethically
questionable.
questionable, exactly. And that's definitely something the FDA is paying close attention to as they review, all of Zynn's marketing materials and practices, looking specifically at whether these social media campaigns are, intentionally or unintentionally targeting young people, which would be a big no-no.
So what happens if the FDA decides that they have crossed a line?
Right.
What can they even do?
They have some options. I mean, they could issue warning letters
Okay.
to Philip Morris, tell them to change their tactics. They could potentially impose fines.
Mm-hmm.
And then in more extreme cases, they could even revoke their marketing authorization altogether, which would essentially be,
Wow.
game over.
So there's a lot at stake here for Philip Morris, clearly.
Yeah, they're going all in on this, and
Yeah.
it's a risky play.
It is. And it's not even just the FDA they have to worry about.
Right.
It's like every state now, too.
Totally. And we're seeing, individual states taking action. Massachusetts, for example.
Right.
They slapped a 75% excise tax on all nicotine pouches, including Zyn.
Wow.
That's a hefty, yeah.
That's gotta hurt.
Yeah, California's thinking about even stricter measures, potentially even a flavor ban. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's getting interesting.
It's like this whole new world of, like, sin taxes. It's not just cigarettes anymore.
Oh, exactly.
Like, they're expanding.
And the idea is that, if you make it more expensive,
Right.
especially for young people,
Sure.
it might deter them. But of course, the flip side is always,
Right.
are you going to drive people back to cigarettes? And that would obviously be a step in the wrong direction.
It's that whole thing we were talking about before,
Exactly.
the harm reduction.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah, where do you draw the line? It's so tough.
Tough situation.
So let's talk about what's next for Zyn, because I know there are these rumors swirling around
Yeah.
about a potential ban in 2024. Is there any truth to that, or is that just like internet speculation?
It's mostly speculation, but
Yeah.
there's, that kernel of truth to it.
Okay.
Because like we said, the FDA is still reviewing their marketing application.
Right.
And there's always a chance they could say, nope, we're not approving this.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, that would basically be a ban.
Wow, so it's not off the table.
Not off the table. I wouldn't say it's likely,
Right.
but it's definitely a possibility. And, I think for the FDA,
Yeah.
they haven't done that before.
Right, they haven't banned a product like this outright before.
Not yet, but they are under increasing pressure from lawmakers and public health groups who are saying, look, you got to do something about these products, especially the ones that are so clearly appealing to young people.
It's interesting because they really are kind of...
Treading new territory.
Yeah, it's like uncharted waters.
For sure. So we'll see.
So the FDA could ban it.
They could.
But even if they don't, I mean,
Yeah.
they've got so many legal challenges, the negative press.
Right. It's an uphill battle for Philip Morris, for
Yeah,
sure.
seems like it.
Yeah. And, this whole thing really just highlights
Yeah.
a much bigger trend, which is the regulatory landscape for these products is changing rapidly.
Right,
It's not just about cigarettes anymore.
right.
The FDA, they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we regulate e-cigarettes and nicotine pouches and heat not burn and all these other things?
It's a whole new world.
It is. It's a whole new world.
It's the Wild West of nicotine out there.
It really is. It's a free-for-all.
So with all that said, with this whole new world of regulation, you mentioned earlier that people are using Zyn as a harm reduction tool to get off cigarettes.
Right.
So what happens to those people if Zyn is banned or harder to get? Do they just go back to smoking?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? And it's something policymakers are really struggling with because there is a concern that if you restrict access to products like this, it could have the unintended consequence of pushing some people back to traditional cigarettes, which nobody wants.
It's like you're trying to solve one problem and you create another.
Exactly.
How do you even approach that? How do you balance harm reduction for current smokers with protecting young people?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough.
It's a tough one.
There's no easy answers, right?
Right.
But I think a lot of experts are pushing for, like a multi-pronged approach, right?
Okay.
Where you have things like stricter regulations, maybe increased taxes, which we're already seeing,
Sure.
but then also really robust public health campaigns,
Right.
educating people about the risk, and then also, importantly, better access to cessation programs.
Okay.
Because, it's one thing to say, don't do this, it's bad for you.
Right.
But if people don't have the support to quit,
Right. They're just going to keep doing it. Yeah.
Exactly. They're going to find a way. So
Yeah.
it's got to be this kind of, you know, carrots and sticks approach, I guess.
So where does this all leave us? What's your, big picture takeaway from all the research you've done on this?
Well, I think the Zyn situation is really interesting
Yeah.
because it highlights a few key things. I mean,
Let's
one,
say.
it shows us that, how people consume nicotine is changing.
Right.
We're moving away from just traditional cigarettes and into this world of, like you said, this wild west of new products.
It's true.
And that creates all sorts of challenges for regulators and for public health experts who are trying to keep up.
Absolutely, because it seems like every time they create a rule for something,
Right.
something new pops up.
Exactly. And the other thing that Zyn really shows us is,
Yeah.
the power of social media.
Right.
I mean, the rise of Zinfluencers and just the way that these products are marketed online, it's a whole new ballgame. And it's something that I think regulators are just starting to wrap their heads around.
It's like the Wild West in that way, too. It's like, where do you even begin?
Exactly. And I think the final point, and this is an important one,
Okay.
is that when it comes to nicotine, there are just no easy answers.
Yeah, it's very nuanced.
Very nuanced. It's a highly addictive substance.
Right.
And any attempt to regulate it
Yeah.
has to balance, individual freedom and choice with protecting the public health. And that's just a really tough needle to thread.
It's a conversation that will continue
Oh, yeah,
for a long time to come.
for a long time.
So, final thought here. If Zyn does disappear, are we just going to see something new take its place?
That is the question, isn't it? I think as long as there is a demand for nicotine, companies will find a way to meet that demand.
Well, of course.
They'll develop new products, new ways to market them.
New loopholes.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's really on us as consumers to,
Yeah.
stay informed, to think critically about this stuff.
Right. Do your research.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a fascinating dive into the world of Zyn and all its complexities.
It's a crazy world out there.
It really is, but hopefully our listeners feel a little more informed and prepared to navigate these issues.
That's what we hope.
As always, if you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future deep dives, hit us up on social media.
We love to hear from you.
Until next time, happy diving.